So what you will have just seen me doing is trimming up tomato bushes, and this is really important in order to prolong their season. And I've honestly been kind of slacking on it just because gardening season has pretty well been over for everything, but since I have these in the greenhouse with the heater, they're continuing to go. And these indeterminate varieties of tomatoes, these are both heirlooms. I have a Cherokee Purple and a Brandywine, and they just vine, and the vines will get 10 plus feet long if you let them just keep going. And they're constantly producing suckers and shooting off new leaves. And I feel like the Brandywine especially is a very naturally bushy plant. It just keeps producing leaves, and the leaves get very big and full. And the reason that we want to trim them back is because we want to make sure that the energy goes to fruiting rather than producing green. And we do need leaves. It's very important for photosynthesis. We need them for the plant to thrive and collect energy and to keep growing, but it doesn't need to go to excess. And that's definitely what happens, especially with this Brandywine plant. I normally keep up with trimming these a lot more whenever it's in the thick of garden season. But you know, since we're in late into the fall now, we're in mid-November, everything pretty well is done in my garden. I have a little bit of green beans left, which you will have just seen, and I have a few greens left under a cold frame, and that's pretty much it. So it's time, and we're past the point of trimming, just pinching suckers. I did find a few that I pinched off, but for the most part they've grown and they've already started producing and flowering and you know, trying to produce more tomatoes even on the suckers. So I have cut some of those off even though they had blooms on them. I just really want to force growth into the tomatoes. Now the Brandywine plant is doing really, really well. It's got a lot of tomatoes on it. They're ripening. I'm starting to get them pretty consistently. It's the Cherokee Purple that is a little bit more inconsistent. I just plucked like 5 tomatoes off of it all at once, and that was all that was ripe. And now it's back to a whole bunch of small green tomatoes. So now I have to wait again for those tomatoes to grow in size and to ripen. So where the Brandywine is consistently producing and I'm getting a little at a time, the Cherokee Purple really isn't doing that. So I am finished trimming up the Brandywine. I've gotten quite a bit clipped off of it. I am now going to move on to this Cherokee Purple and trim it up a little. The bush is smaller. The leaves they're a lot more like a traditional tomato plant, so they're very small and kind of triangular shaped, and they don't get big and bushy like the Brandywine does. And it definitely has not vined out as much as the Brandywine has, so it shouldn't need as much trimmed up, but I am going to go ahead and trim it back and pinch any suckers and hope that we can get the fruits that are on it to grow bigger a little bit faster, because it does have quite a bit of small green tomatoes and they're not getting very sizable, where the Brandywine actually is looking really, really good. So I'm going to go ahead and get that trimmed up, and then I'll show you a little bit of what's on the plants. The Cherokee Purple had quite a bit that wasn't looking the greatest anymore. The leaves were kind of shriveling up on it, so I did trim quite a bit more off of that than I thought I would. You know, it's getting later in the season, and sooner or later these plants are just going to exhaust themselves. We're hoping we can make it into December. Kind of just going to play it by ear and see what happens. But now that I have them all trimmed up, I'm going to get rid of some of the stuff that I have just laying here in the floor and then give them a good water. Before I water and have a bunch of wet stuff to trip over, I was just going to show you some of the tomatoes. So this is the Brandywine plant, and you can kind of see what I mean about how it has a ton of good-sized tomatoes growing on it. And they're growing and looking very healthy still. I did trim off quite a bit of kind of dead stuff. I mean, you can see there's still a little bit here and there, but this plant is looking good. Honestly, this is the best it's looked all year. During the summer, it just really didn't do anything, and now it's growing some really great tomatoes. The Cherokee Purple plant is not looking as good. The tomatoes that it's getting are very small. Let's see if I can find one. And you can see it kind of has this weird, I might have to look into that and see what it's doing, but these tomatoes just aren't as healthy, and you can see the leaves too are shriveling up. And I am going to try spraying some copper fungicide on them, because it's possible that there could be some sort of a fungus that's causing this. Cherokee Purple are actually pretty prone to disease, but I'll give that a try after I get done watering. And between that and the trimming up of, I think there's one more I want to pop off, of these limbs and stuff, I'm hoping that it will push these to fruit a little bit better. But they're all pretty small on this plant, so we'll have to see what happens. So I do have some Super Thrive mixed up. I usually use this on seedlings whenever I transplant them and when I first put them out in the garden, but I have plenty left, and I feel like pouring some of this into the Cherokee Purple, and I'll probably just go ahead and throw some on the Brandywine too. It certainly won't hurt anything, but I'm going to see if that might help revive it a little bit and get a little bit more life out of it. All right, all done, and that only took me about 20 to 30 minutes, so I still have a little time left on my lunch break to just get some reading done and relax before I have to go back to work.
I thought I would do myself the honor of coming round in person. I have just got a...
So this is the used air filter that I just pulled out, and you know, it was pretty dirty. You can see on the back, you can check these yourself if you want, but I just wait until they always check it whenever they do an oil change, so I wait until they let me know it needs done. And then I found this one on Amazon. It was $14 and some change, I believe. So a lot cheaper than what they're gonna charge you to replace it for you. And you just saw that it only took a few minutes to actually do the change. So it's crazy that they charge, you know, $50, $60, $70 to do this for you. So I definitely recommend going ahead and doing this yourself. You can put in your vehicle information even in Amazon, and it will tell you whether a part fits your car or not. So super easy, super fast. just got back from Hobby Lobby. The last Christmas decoration I needed to do was to replace my vase that I always keep seasonal flowers in. And so I had to go and pick up the flowers to put in that. I was waiting for the week that the regular floral was 50% off because the Christmas floral was always 50% off. So I needed to wait for both of them to be on sale together so I could pick them up. And this was the week. So I really like the idea of red roses for Christmas time. So for my base, I picked up this bouquet of a deep red, almost like a burgundy wine color rose. And then I got little pieces to stick in with it that are Christmassy. So I got 2 of these, just pine with some little pine cones in them. So I'm gonna stuff those down into the bouquet, and I'm sure I'll have to trim the ends because they're way too long. And the same with these. I'm not even sure what kind of a flower this is, but I picked up 2 of them just to have something a little festive and Christmassy to stick in there. So I'll have to go get out my wire cutters and snip and shape and get all of it stuffed together and stick it into the vase, and then I'll show you what it looks like. All right, it's all together. I did have to swap out my vases because this one has a wide mouth and the flowers were all just kind of laying over and I couldn't really shape them. But this taller vase with the narrower top was perfect. So I got them in there, bunched, shaped, and I added my pearls back to the vase. I am finally going to process the herbs that I dried. I don't have very many left because I already did a massive batch of them late in the summer. And then I have now just what little bit was left this fall whenever it was time to finally cut everything down. So I am using this small, I believe it's a 4-cup food processor. I do also have a 13 cup, so if I were to do a huge batch of this, I would probably use that one. And then I do also have a coffee grinder, which I'll be honest, I feel like the coffee grinder does the best job of grinding these because I feel like a food processor, you might have bigger bits at the top and then the stuff in the bottom is going to be ground extra fine. And the coffee grinder, I think, does the best job with it. But since it's so small, you have to do little bitty batches at a time. So I am gonna go ahead and just use my small food processor instead. And I have, I believe, sage, oregano, and basil. And so I've already got a couple of jars started. This is the leftover from the ones that I processed earlier. I have spice jars filled, and then this was the excess. And then I have a jar that I just started for basil, but I don't have a label printed for it yet. So I do have my label maker handy, and I'm gonna do that as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick this to the jar. And now it's ready for the basil. And I believe this is it for the sage. For these, some of these smaller ones, I don't care so much about branches, but the bigger pieces I'll definitely take off. And realistically, these were probably ready to process a while ago. At least the others were. The basil and the oregano doesn't take very long to dry out. But sage, the leaves are just thicker and they carry more moisture, and so it takes a lot longer for them to dry out. And even now that they're fully dried, they almost have a little bit of a soft feeling yet. All right, now we're just gonna chop it up. All right, and that is it for the sage. And I'm gonna go ahead and switch and do the basil. Now I'm gonna commit a sin and combine different types of basil together because I just don't have a ton of this left to process. And realistically, basil is probably the one that I use the most, and it doesn't grow as crazy as oregano does because I also use oregano a lot. But that means that I use a ton of the fresh basil in the summertime when it's actually growing. So there's just not as much left to process at the end of the season. Such a good smell. All right, and the basil won't take as long to blitz as the sage did. It'll break down really fast. All right, that looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and pop that into its jar. And I'm gonna do the same thing with this as I did with the basil and just strip it stem by stem, because oregano gets very woody stems on it too. And so really don't want all of that in there. I think one more, and that'll probably be enough for this round. Go ahead and get those chopped up. Here we go.
This bag is Polo Ralph Lauren, and believe it or not, I got it for an absolute steal for only $35 at an antique mall. The cape came from ThredUp, and it is also Ralph Lauren. The skirt and the boots also came from ThredUp. The skirt is Ann Taylor, and the boots are Aldo. And I've had them both in my wardrobe for a few years, and they just never go out of style. And then last but not least, the jewelry. Every single piece that I'm wearing today was a hand-me-down from my grandmother.
I just ran out and picked up my lunch from Panera, and I thought I'd do a really quick chat on my way back home about fashion to follow up that last clip that I just did of my outfit details. So with me in fashion, I definitely am someone who is on a budget. You know, I'm a single mom, I'm a solo homeowner, my boyfriend and I don't live together yet. I don't know for sure when we will. We initially were going to buy a house this past summer, and then the market just, well, everyone knows what the market is like right now, I think, so no explanation needed. But at any rate, I am not a person who can afford to just buy all the newest trends and swap out my wardrobe every single season over and over again. You know, that's just not something that is sustainable for me. But fortunately, I also really like the looks of classic, timeless style. So my goal when it comes to fashion is to buy quality over quantity, and to also buy secondhand as much as I possibly can. So ThredUp I love for things like finding leather boots and cashmere sweaters and things like that. I will watch for sales. So an example, last winter, I think it might have been the winter before, I'd had my eyes on a white good quality pea coat, and I found one I really liked from J. Crew, and at the end of the season they had a really good sale, and so I was able to snag it for a couple $100s. So there are certain things like that where I am more than willing to spend $200, $300, $400 for something that I know that I will wear for years and years and years to come. I had bought previously a couple of wool pea coats. One I had gotten from my mom as a Christmas gift that she has eventually given back to me because she's no longer able to fit in it. And then the other one I had bought myself, and I still have both of them and I still wear them. And they were purchased back in, I believe, 2007. So I am very content to pay the price for something that is good quality, that is going to last for a very long time with proper care. So like my wool coats and stuff, I take them to the cleaners every season at the end of the season whenever I'm going to store them, and I have them cleaned. My leather boots and bags, I meticulously care for. I clean them, I condition them often, and especially when I'm going to store them, I put, you know, like tissue paper or something to kind of stuff them and help them keep their shape so they don't collapse on themselves. So it's finding good quality items at really good prices if I'm able to, and taking good care of the garments and the items that I do have. And that's really my main goal with fashion, because I love to get dressed up, I love to look nice, but I can't afford to just constantly go out and buy stuff all the time. So any kind of fashion that you do see from me, I will try to remember to share details when I can of, you know, maybe where I got it from or how much I paid for it or how I care for it and things like that. But that is my goal when it comes to fashion, and that is, so essentially it's kind of like looking great on a budget, I guess, is what you'll see from me.
Staying in hostels. Backpacking and staying in hostels?
Backpacking and staying in hostels.
We are.